Hey guys, welcome back to Naan Central. Today we're going to be making some brownies. Now this recipe is incredibly simple, but it yields the most delicious, fudgy brownies with a glassy, shiny top. To start things off, we're going to line an 8x8 aluminum baking pan with a sheet of parchment paper. This can be quite the frustrating process, but as long as you make some cuts in the corners with some scissors, you should be okay. Make additional cuts as necessary so that the corners of the parchment paper lie flush with the corners of the pan. With our pan prepped, we're going to go over to a large saucepan over a scale and weigh out 170 grams of butter. Next, in a bowl, we're going to weigh out 250 grams of sugar. Then in a separate bowl, go 62 grams or about half a cup of flour. And don't spill any. Then to our flour, we're going to add in about 57 grams of Dutch processed cocoa powder and give our dry ingredients a thorough mixing. Then with our saucepan at medium-high heat, we're going to cook our butter until the milk solids start to brown. Once we see the slightest indications of browning, we're going to turn off the heat and whisk the butter constantly so that the milk solids do not burn. As you can see here, even though the stovetop is off, the residual heat inside the saucepan is enough to continue browning the milk solids. Once the butter has this nice and golden brown color, we can lower the heat even further by adding in some sugar and whisking some more. Now even though it looks like an oily disaster, as we add in some more ingredients, it'll start to come together. First up is a teaspoon of molasses. The exact amount doesn't matter too much, you could use more or less if you want, and that is followed by a handful of chocolate chips. Now this goes without saying, but obviously you could use some higher quality chocolate here if you want. Next we're going to give these ingredients a cursory mixing to melt in the chocolate. With our chocolate nice and melted, we can go in with the next ingredients, which are half a teaspoon of salt and about 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Next up is an optional half a teaspoon of instant espresso powder, followed by our 3 eggs. Now avid viewers of the channel who are familiar with the lore will know that in the cookie video I did this process with an electric hand mixer, which would certainly be an ideal tool for this job, but I figured since I took the easy route in that video, this time I would try it out the hard way. After mixing thoroughly for about a minute, we can leave this out for about 15 minutes and then come back and stir it again for another minute. Apparently this step of dissolving the sugar helps us achieve a shinier crust. Once our wet ingredients have been thoroughly mixed together, we're going to add in our dry mixture of our cocoa powder and our flour. Next we're going to slowly incorporate the two together using a rubber spatula. Now the slowness here isn't to avoid overmixing, it's just so that powder doesn't fly everywhere in the kitchen. Once we've reduced the amount of ingredients that are still dry in the batter, we can start to stir more aggressively. Essentially, we're just going to keep mixing our batter until there are no more spots of dry flour and cocoa powder remaining. Next, we're going to finally pour our batter into our prepared pan, which I probably should have done in a better exposed area. Optionally, you can let the batter rest in the fridge cupboard for 24 hours before baking for a deeper flavor, but I needed the brownies urgently, so I opted not to wait, and they still turned out incredible. Once we're ready to bake, we're going to place our pan in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes depending on the pan size. For best results, I recommend checking for an in-tone temperature of about 205 degrees. Here's what the brownies look like out of the oven, and now we're going to let them cool down in the pan for about 10 minutes or until they can be removed using the parchment paper to a wire rack to cool completely. Once our brownies are cool, we can slice them up into 16 or 9 pieces depending on how big you want them. Here I'm doing 16 pieces, so I'm starting off with a center cut, and then I'm going to cut each half in half again going the same way, and then I'm just going to repeat the process going the opposite direction. Now if you're impatient like me and didn't wait for the brownies to cool completely, you're probably going to get some smearing on the knife, in which case I recommend that you wipe off the knife after each cut. And that's it, the brownies are now ready to enjoy. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you in the next video.